I'm going to stop there and just ask if you have any questions. And if not, I'm going to crack a beer. Or at least have a gin.
Well, first of all, Chris, I think it's not probably a case that we've had enough. I think we're actually quite taken back by such a fun evening of but an extraordinary stories from yourself, and I think some of us must be feeling rather jealous. Has anybody got any questions? I'm sure you have, so let me put it down to the floor.
How do you come down to earth, Chris? Because you're very high speed, and you must be worrying, and possibly your wife also. How is he going to gear down, or is it possible?
I'm not. I mean, I stopped smoking 10 years ago. My plan is to start again to shorten my retirement. So I keep saying, when I did that sort of 400-mile walk, I ended up on telly in the Emirates, and they said before we went on, only thing, just don't mention alcohol or cigarettes. And the guy on live TV said, so, what training did you do? And I said, I cut to a lower tar brand of cigarettes. Like, don't. I don't know. I'm never going to do anything different. I'm going to do different flavors of this work. So, essentially I had 10 years in the military, 10 years in banking and broking, which I enjoyed. I did enjoy the intellectual aspects of it, but I didn't make very much money, and it wasn't an awful lot of fun. The 10 years that I've had, or more now, doing private security, have enabled me to combine the two things that I have enjoyed. They've enabled me to combine the finance side with the running of the business and the military side, both with the security, but also with the people that I work with who I genuinely love. And, you guys paid for me to be trained at enormous expense at Sandhurst and elsewhere. And I feel like I'm paying you back by putting that experience to good use, leading and managing teams of people overseas, generally for the UK interest.
Chris, how important is photography to you? And is it becoming more important as you get older?
So it's a really interesting question. I mean, I always had a camera. I bought a camera when I was 17. I carried that, shot with it, and lots of others over the years. I bought a decent SLR in the late 1990s and used it intermittently when the children came along. Didn't buy a digital SLR until 2012, 2013. And that's really sparked my interest, and it's grown over the last few years. When I went to work in October last year, and I was away October, November, December, that's the first time I hadn't taken a big camera with me in years. So I don't know, that wasn't so much because my interest in photography has waned, but rather I was starting with a new company and I wanted to focus on the work. I think where my photography is going next is probably, I'm using this GFX, which is a big old beast. And every time you get it out, it has an impact on the environment that you're trying to photograph. And I think what I'm going to do next is buy an XT4 or an XT3, which would be better for video and have less of an impact on the environment that you're shooting in. And yeah,
100 FV.
Yeah, I mean, any of those. I'm a bit of a Fuji fanboy now, and how important? What's important to me is making a living right now. I would love to do photography to make a living, but being realistic, I'm 54 years old. I've got 2 kids at boarding school, and I'm probably not going to be able to replace the income that I make from doing private security with photography. However, if I can do more in future, then of course I will. I think we probably all feel the same way, right?
Yeah, I think everybody in the Carol Club would love to actually make more money out of their photography, and certain people are trying to make more, shift their careers to that sort of way. It just seems that you've got an absolutely fascinating. We were talking about locations, and you last week sort of said, "Oh, come to Iraq," and I can't. It's a very, very different sort of type of photography. It looks spectacular because of it. It's so different. Do you think that parts of Iraq will gradually open up to the tourists?
I am planning on starting a business next year, taking people to Iraq, not just for photography, but also for motorcycling. My motorbike is still in Erbil, in a pal's warehouse. I've got half a dozen committed mates here that want to come over. It's 450. It's about between 400 and 450 pounds to get to Iraq. You can fly from London Heathrow into Istanbul on Turkish Airlines. I forget the name of the Austrian carrier, but the Austrian carrier you can fly direct in. It's visa on arrival in Erbil. There are literally no barriers to entry. And although I rather sort of said small bombs, big country, the security is pretty good in the Kurdish region. It's pretty good. I can't say too much because my job, I make money for my company providing security to diplomats in Kurdistan, right?
Yeah.
I'm flying in, and there was a part of me. I know that they're doing a trip to a certain place on a certain date, and part of me wanted to turn up for shits and giggles and just say, "Hi, I'm here. While I'm here, let me introduce you to my friends," because they're interested in some of the stuff that they're doing. But I can't do that because that would not be in the interests of my firm. Because my clients would then say, "Well, how come you're here by yourself and we need you?" And they'd be right to say that. And I, of course, would say, if somebody kidnaps and kills me, nobody cares. If somebody kidnaps you and kills you, it's front page news. That's why you have armed protective security. And that's why I'm not a target. I'm quite happy to keep a low profile, but I'm still not going to do it. So you can come. I wouldn't have taken my wife. Brought my wife over, jumped into a soft skin car, not an armored car, and we ran up to the Hook. I've been up and down that road to the Hook on my motorbike several times. The biggest threat in northern Iraq is road traffic accidents. In fact, across Iraq, even at the height of the war against Islamic State, more people killed in Iraq by road traffic accidents than were by terrorism. They're just terrible drivers because everything's in the hand of God. If God wanted me to have working brake lights, he'd make them work, right?
Oh God.
I'd say, Chris, that I thought your Yahidi camp photographs were outstanding. Mono.
Thank you.
The expressions on people's faces, I thought were wonderful.
You can see more of all of those. I have a website. If you put my name into Google with photography, Chris Pook, my website is there. There's far too much material on that website. You'd be there forever and a day. And what I want to do is change my website. So at the moment, it's kind of divided by countries and some journals, some annual journals. And what I want to do is just change that to tell some stories. So maybe that series on the aid drop with the Yazidis, maybe that could be one story. Maybe the family that I keep going visiting, that could be another story. It's tempting. We all want to show all of our work, don't we? And it's when you've taken it, you can't. You're not necessarily the best judge of the quality of your own work. Let's say. Hey, here's one for you guys. I mean, have many of you gone down the Royal Photographic Society route? I mean, it's an organisation I've just joined. I'm thinking about trying to put some photographs together to do the associate membership or the licentiate thing. I don't know.
LRPS and so on. Yeah, there's quite a few of our group runs here. There, I think you adjudicate sometimes, don't you?
Yes, I was an adjudicator. Yeah, for 2 years.
And yeah, there's quite a few people who have picked up their awards, their accreditations through that way. The other one which happens in camera clubs is we have our camera club is associated to the Photographic Alliance of Great Britain, which stands for PAGB. And then probably if you looked on our website and our Facebook page, you'll see sometimes letters going after their names, such as CPAGB, D, and so on. And again, that's a sort of like another way of accreditation. I think RPS are more series of pictures, which I think is probably really suits you. And that's you really tell stories, and they're like panels. Because you came in last week to see our panel, we were having our panel competition, and that's our only competition actually where you are looking at a panel of 4 images. Everything else is more individual, just one picture. So, and it's more on that basis on that. So, but I love panels. I love the story, and I think that's when you go to a gallery and you see a sequence of images, or in a magazine and look through those. I think it's really interesting.
Can I ask you, Chris? I remember because you're a strange guy that you've been built by the army, in which case certain things that we can't accept in your situation you can accept slightly more, and you doing all this. I reminded myself that when some time ago I was in Riyadh on business, and this is before the war with Saddam, although he'd sent some rockets over to Riyadh. And I was told before somebody booked me into a hotel there that, I found out later actually, they booked me into a hotel that was right centre of where the Ministry of Defence, the Ministry of this, the Ministry of that was, and this was in the middle, and actually it's where the rockets are coming from. So I did ring back to London saying, what the hell do you think you're doing here? By the way, this is the point of my discussion here, is if I see Kate Adie coming into this hotel, I'm off straight away, because she used to go into everywhere. Goddamn. Anyway, this wouldn't be funny other than the following. When I went down one morning to have breakfast, Kate Adie was coming in with a full crew. I left for Dammam. So I'm just wondering, have you ever met people like that in your situation where you're seeing
all the time,
or people and you think, are you crazy? How do you do this stuff? I mean,
there's a lady, BBC correspondent for Iraq, has an unpronounceable name. She's of Iranian descent. I've met her a couple of times. Not very friendly, actually. I was trying to get in touch with her for a while. We both ended up in the VIP lounge in Baghdad airport. And I waited until she stuffed her face full of cake and then went over, sat down and gave her my card. And then we had a chat. But people like Maya Gabaili is the correspondent for AFP. So we're good pals. We've met several times. We chat a fair bit. She's enormously plucky. I introduced her to my pals in the Hook, and she spent some time with them and wrote a piece on them. She was in at the end of Islamic State and went to Syria. So a very brave lady. I mean, she is American Lebanese and speaks Arabic, so can kind of blend in. But that's not to take anything away from her courage. I'm really, really fond of her, and she writes a good piece. Met the BBC a bit in Kabul. If anybody's seen the film Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, and I'm grinning, let me tell you, Kabul was nothing like the movie. So yes, I've met a few, and I've met some really, really good people on the circuit, from the media, from different agencies, and on the business side. I've met some incredibly generous people, very kind people. I mean, honestly, Afghanistan, I loved Afghanistan. I thought it was crazy. The code of Pashtunwali, forgive my pronunciation, if you ask for shelter, they're honor bound to give it to you, though you may be their biggest enemy, and they'll protect you to the death. And yet, if you're talking to your best mate, and if you upset him, he'll chop you into small pieces. I mean, it's just a crazy, ridiculous place. Iraq is much more Western, as you would expect. It's geographically much more Western. The people are much better educated, but it's still crazy. Still crazy.
Overall, you've covered quite a lot of the Arab nations there, and do you feel that the Arab nations get a bad press in the EU?
Absolutely. Read Wilfred Thesiger. To listen to Reed, a man who met them perhaps before they were completely spoiled by oil, and we shouldn't necessarily give them all the same characteristic. Seven Pillars of Wisdom starts. I can't say that I've read that book cover to cover, right? But if you read the first chapter or two of the Seven Pillars of Wisdom, it gives a really good description of the Arabian Peninsula and how the peoples have migrated from southern Arabia through the desert, pushed out by stronger tribes, further and further over time into the desert, migrated north through the desert, and then become agrarian again and being integrated into the northern societies. And if you speak to, my friend Murfak al-Rubai, if you say to him, and I know what my grandfather did, and I think my great grandfather was from London. he knows that his tribe. He knows that his tribe left Yemen in the year 900 and something, and he can go back through all of the generations recounting his family history. So if you say to Dr. Mo, where are you from? He won't sound from Iraq. He'll sound from Yemen. You know, we came here 900 years ago. They have a different sense of history, and the Yemenis, the Omanis, the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Iraqis all have different characteristics. But I think one thing that is a common bond between them is their generosity and their hospitality. And if I had handy some of the quotes from the Arabian Sands, I'd flash them up, but I don't. But he talks very much about the strength of the requirement for hospitality, and that is a tradition which is alive and well. I mean, I loved working in. So I changed jobs. I worked with G4S for 4 years. Finished, went back on my motorbike, and I'm now doing a different job at the embassy, which has less interaction with Iraqis. So as much as I'm back in my beloved Iraq and back in Baghdad, I have much less connection than I'm used to with Iraqis. And I'd forgotten how much I missed them until we had a lunch with our local staff. And I was once again surrounded by the noisy hubbub of happy Iraqis just enjoying each other's company. And, you know, I love that. And it goes with my comments earlier about resilience. The fact that they're so open, hospitable, resilient is just remarkable, given the trauma that they've faced, that we have subjected them to over the last 30 years. We're not completely guilty of everything that's happened there, but taking Saddam out of power was probably not the right thing to do. You know, crazy thing, last story ever. In 2009, I'm at the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, on exercise in a wood in Wales, and we're going into our lager with our platoon. We wake up in the morning and all the Iraqi students have gone. So that's because Saddam invaded Kuwait. And Saddam has been made to appear now, this great ogre that we shouldn't have anything to do with, nasty guy, gas the Kurds. At the time he was gassing the Kurds, we were training his army. You know, the Americans are fickle friends. And we were training his army right up until the moment that he invaded Kuwait. He was a great mate until he wasn't, and we shouldn't forget it. And I don't want to end on this note, but you know, the Western world has done a massive disservice to Iraq and the Iraqi people by doing what they did. And I wanted to go and serve in Afghanistan. I thought that was a just war, foolishly, with lots of hindsight. I didn't want to go and serve in Iraq. The Iraq war to me just seemed to be all about oil. What a waste of a war. You know, Cheney and his gang went to war to secure their energy needs for the next 100 years, just at the point when Iraqi oil became irrelevant. I mean, how unjust is that? Anyway, ask me another one. Let's not end on.
Well, one of the things is, obviously, there's a lot of people this evening who've been sipping, enjoying their fine wine and beers, and someone watching from here. Yeah. So is Iraq a completely dry country?
No, that's another guys in London that work for, I worked for G4S. The G4S policy that Iraq was dry, and here's the reasons why. It's like, you guys have a big one here. You got no idea. It's absolutely not dry. There's a bloody duty free at the airport. In fact, Erbil Airport, another good reason to come. Cheapest duty free you've ever been to in all your life. I didn't tell you, right? But when the embassy has a party, they send somebody up to Erbil just on a return ticket to buy booze from the duty free.
I couldn't quite understand this. It was some time ago. Whether it's still the same, I don't know. But when I was in, it was still in Riyadh, and I went to one of the embassy, and I went in there. It's like there was a table that I couldn't see the end of, and it was just full of booze. And I said, "How the hell do you get this?" It all comes in a diplomatic bag. Which my way of saying is a bloody big 40-foot container, which still can be a diplomatic bag, apparently. Anyway, the peculiarity was there were guys working for British Aerospace, like it was, something like that. And there's two of them I met. And you've got to be careful about this booze thing out there. They had their own Land Rovers outside. They said, "Yeah," but we drink, and obviously in the compounds you drink. You just don't drink outside the compounds. We make our own booze in some cases. But they drunk too much, both of them. I thought, well, this is crazy. Surely you guys can't just get in your own car and go back. And so, well, we have to be a bit careful. We know the police are down the road. They're looking for, this sort of problem with the car and stuff. And you can get a problem. I said, have you had a problem? Oh, yeah, both George and I have had the lashes. Typical British humour, if that's what it was. But it relieves the boredom.
It's
the peculiarity of what happens in places.
Interestingly, Saudi is going through massive reform under the new prince and is currently in the early stages of opening a new resort on the northwestern coast up against the Red Sea, right next to Jordan. And that's going to be wet. So they've got 5 mega hotels they're building that will have bars. That's going to be an interesting challenge for security, because that'll be a big target for extremists. But Iraq is a secular society, fairly secular society, and lots of Christians, more in Erbil than in Baghdad these days. But wherever the Christians are you're in a Christian area when you see off licenses. So it's not as if it's permitted, but it's undercover. It's absolutely open. I've been to nightclubs. If you told me you're going to go work in Iraq, and in 2 weeks' time, you're going to find yourself at 4 o'clock in the morning drinking shorts on a bar, watching people table dancing, I'd have said, no way is that true. It's true.
Anyway, we've just reached 10 o'clock here, so I'm going to formally, come to a conclusion for the evening, but I will obviously, as always, leave things open for anybody to have a discussion, and if anybody wants to hang around and so on. I think on behalf of the club, Chris, I would say thank you so much for tuning in and presenting such fantastic images and fantastic stories. And also, I think quite a lot of inspiration, because I recently just had a birthday, and I'm thinking, I was getting a bit old for things, but hearing your exploits and working out roughly where you were, cool. I'm not over the hill yet. I still can do these sort of things, and very much so. I always put the odd little note down here, and one which when we have speakers. And the one which, there's one particular image which I must say really I thought was absolutely spectacular. And personally, I would like to say how spectacular that was. And that was the woman who was remembering the genocide. You sort of said that you always put that particular, she's a happy person, but put that face on. I must say, I thought that as one of the colour images throughout in the evening was actually really, really powerful. And I think that's also with all the portraits which we've seen, there was such genuine feeling in those images, and also it's your the stories which go behind them, which sometimes we miss as a camera club. We just get the title and we don't get to hear the overall story. So on behalf of the Camera Club, let me say thank you so much. I understand that we're doing a donation as well for yourself, and that's what you're wanting replicants for tonight, which is very, very, very grateful for you. And certainly Chris will be organising that for us. Our treasurer will be organising that for you, and we'll let you know how that is. But many thanks, and I'm sure everybody would like to give you a virtual round of applause.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you've enjoyed it, Chris. Very good.
Yeah, Chris, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you.